Hey everybody, did you know you can go to colinmullen.com in order to get art and art prints like the picture you're about to see? That'll be on there. You can buy it with money and it'll be at your doorstep and the mailman will hand it to you and be like, man, you're so cool. Give me a high five. colinmullen.com. Is that really what I'm going with? Hey everybody. So I booted up Paint Tool side today rather than, putting a canvas together and all that jazz. And we're going to be drawing a hand today. And the reason I'm using this is just it'd be easier to film than a sketchbook, so that's what I'm doing. Anyway, you can use whatever you like. This is a tutorial. This is a follow-along kind of tutorial, so go ahead and pull out your sketchbook, your whatever you want to draw with. If you want to paint, get your paint out. Do whatever you're gonna do. I would recommend something that you don't really care too much about because we're going to be just doing sketches off of reference photos and that kind of thing, so it's really not relevant that it looks good. We're just learning today. And I think that's my first tip on how to draw hands good. You see hands all the time. This is why they're so hard to draw. Every time you do anything in your life, you pretty much have to manipulate whatever the thing is that you're working with your hands. And so you're looking at your hands a lot. And so you kind of know what they look like, but not like really specifically. Just kind of generally speaking, you know what a hand looks like. Like you've seen them before, but like if you were to describe them, your description would be kind of vague and hazy. You may not know all the muscle structure. You don't know the skeleton structure. You're not thinking about the muscle or skeleton structure of your hand when you're looking at your phone. That's weird. That's really weird of you if you do. Like that. Most of the time people don't, right? And so you haven't really studied what a hand looks like. You just generally speaking know what they look like through, past experience. So to follow along with this, you can either follow along with the picture that I've taken, or you can take a picture of your own hand. You can look up a hand on the internet. You can just put your hand in a position and hold it real still while you draw. Whatever works for you. I recognize that some people may not have two hands that they can work with. So I'm going to bring up this website as well. In addition, Google Images, Google a hand. I'm sure you'd find something, but Pose Maniacs is a really cool website. I found it as a kid, and it has been a website that I continuously go back to. It uses Flash, so I don't know how it's going to work here in the future, but basically it's 3D models of like a whole bunch of different poses and stuff like that in different sort of things. It's really good for practicing this sort of thing where I'm saying like repetition is the key to learning how to draw anything. You need to be able to have the reference point. You need to know what it looks like, and eventually you'll be able to draw these things without having to have a reference, which is really cool. It's really neat, and it's really helpful. Don't really worry about it right now. First things first, let's try and draw a hand that looks right. Then we can start working our way away from references, though there's no shame in using references. In fact, actually, this website does have a button for hands for drawing. I've opened it in a different tab. And just like all of the other things on the website, you can rotate it. You can put it into whatever position you'd like. This one is a little bit more like polygonal. It's got polygons rather than being like flat and smooth and all that jazz. I've had to click a couple down the list because like the first couple show like donguses because, it's a nude art website and it's helpful, but YouTube might not think so. Anyway, useful website in case if you need a reference for what a hand looks like and you're not in a place where you can just look at your hand like a weirdo. So there's that. Additionally, I've taken a picture of my hand, and I'm going to put it off to the side here. We're going to just kind of use that I'm going to use that as my reference. Feel free to use your own hand as your own reference point, but as long as, you're kind of keeping track of it, that's all that's really important. So anyway, first things first, I talked about this in the how to draw anything thing that I did, but let's break this down a bit because most of the time when you're drawing, what you're really doing is looking at where things are in relationship to each other. For instance, the top of this finger is quite a bit away from this finger, and it's kind of at this angle to this thumb, right? So rather than try and draw it all at once, why don't we just like draw in some stuff that allows us to get an idea of where things are? Now, there's a billion different ways of doing this, and if you see someone else do it in a different way, it doesn't mean it's wrong. it's sort of just like a shorthand so that way you can see where these reference points are. If you look at different artists, they're going to have different symbols and ways of doing it. If you want to have a different way of doing it, that's totally fine. But here's what I'm looking at. So I've got this muscle for my thumb, right? So I'm just going to kind of, on this diagram or this image that I've taken, circle this eggy bit, right? We got that bit there. Then we've got this bit right here. And it's kind of just like whatever works for you, whatever makes sense to you. I actually probably want to bring the thumb muscle out a bit. But just kind of generally speaking, we'd be doing this while we're drawing rather than tracing the image. And that gives us kind of an idea of like, oh, okay, so if this is here, then that means that, okay, so this muscle that leads up to my pinky is there. And if we were to draw a line from the top of like where the thumb joint goes to the thumb muscle bit there, it's kind of in line, right? Like it's a little bit down, but it's more or less in line. So we can kind of remember that. So we'll do the same thing over here. Let me remove those red lines real quick. Whoop. All right, so we'll do the same thing over here. And I know we've gotten this far into the video and we haven't actually sketched a hand yet. But so I'm going to do the same sort of thing. I'm just going to, let's maybe use a better brush than that. So like I said, we're going to do a very sketchy version of a hand today. So what are we looking at? We got that shape, right? This is sort of the thumb shape there. And there's a little bit back here for where the back of the thumb is. And anything that's sort of a landmark for you, imagine you're kind of like feeling around in the dark and you need to be able to like know where you are. It's the same sort of process. Like you need to know where things are in relationship to each other. So like, then we've got this bit here for the thumb, or the palm of the hand, excuse me. And it kind of bumps out like so, right? Right here. So we're going to bump it out, and let's see. We got the bottom of the thumb bit down there, and so the bump out looks like it's kind of in line with that, right? So this actually needs to be up a little bit higher. We're not going to try and do it perfectly first and like straight off the bat, because we're gonna clean up these lines. If you're doing this with like pencil and paper and you want to do ink eventually, do not be using ink at this point. Because we're going to be cutting out a lot of this. Because a lot of this will be wrong. And that's okay. That's the point of a sketch, is we're going to get bits of this wrong and go, okay, no. We need to push this bit up or that bit down, and we'll go from there. So then we got this bit, and that's a little bit big for that pinky thumb, this thing. I don't know why I keep saying thumb. But that bit there. And then I kind of like to see where this is in relationship to everything else, because that'll help us out quite a bit. So kind of, it's got an angled bit, and then it angles off for the middle finger, and then it goes like so for the rest of the hand. Like that-ish, sort of, kind of. That's kind of where we're at in the drawing process right now. And then you got this fleshy bit here, which is kind of a sphere. I actually want to draw maybe the bit next to it, because this weird shape, switching between the programs, does not seem to be something that my computer is a real fan of. But we've got like that shape, so we're going to transfer that shape over here. Turn off the red layer there for me. So it's kind of like so, where it connects up to this, and then it kind of flattens off, and then this rounds off here. So now we kind of know where that is. And so that would make this bit a little bit easier to draw. So it actually indents a bit. You see that? It's like, it goes like so. So this bit is going to be a bit more angled there. You see what I'm doing? Like, I'm looking at what I'm seeing, and I'm kind of modifying my sketch as I'm going. Kind of, noticing there's a divot here where it goes down. So on and so forth. And then we're going to go up, because that's where the thumb goes. It's got a bit of a divot right here as well. We're not going to focus too much on that detail right now. But, okay. So, now, back over here. Sorry. Alright, so back over here, we notice that this thumb joint... Actually, let me get rid of that red and add another layer so we can have more red. So this thumb joint right here, or the finger joint right there, that's right here. Where is that in relationship to where my thumb bends? Well, my thumb will bend right about there, right? It's not a whole lot down, but a little bit down, right? So we can kind of keep that in reference. And then also, my thumb doesn't go just straight. It's got a bend in, and then it's got another bend in there. And so we've got like this shape, this line going there. And like I've said in the previous video, you don't really want to name it like specifically like a line, because then you'll draw a line rather than a wiggly thing like we've got here. So we've got that thing going on. And so we need to draw that thing rather than a symbol of that thing, where the joint for my thumb starts right about there. A little bit lower. There we go. And then if we bring this up, and then you notice that my thumb, oops, get rid of the red line again. You'll notice that the thumb has a little bit of a bit where it goes in there from the pad of the thumb. And it goes out a bit after the joint, and then in a bit, but not a lot, just a little bit. And then it goes back out, and it curves back towards the nail, which I should probably have trimmed before taking that image. But, you know, my life is a bit of a mess, and so I kind of rolled with whatever yeah, that's what I'm rolling with as proof of concept. So there's my thumb. That's okay. That's an alright looking thumb. And we can kind of sketch in vaguely where the fingernail is. It's something like that. And again, should have probably trimmed it before doing this video, and it gives us a reference point. Okay, so now we know where the thumb is, vaguely. It needs to be cleaned up a bit. There's some lines that are out of place. Like I said, this needs to divot in more and stuff like that. We'll worry about it in a minute, but this gives us a good starting point to know where the thumb is, and maybe it needs to be a bit skinnier. So maybe a bit more like so. And we'll clean up stuff in a minute. But, okay, so now we know that. Where is the finger in relationship to everything else? So the joint for the finger is actually kind of up here, right? A little bit lower, but down there. If you look at my reference image and what you've got. So it's going to be a bit like that, and it kind of connects up with that, like so. Maybe we bring this in a bit so that way the thumb doesn't look quite so weird. And then it's going up again, right? Like so? Like so. That's not quite right. It needs to be down a bit. Just by kind of using the landmarks that we're getting as we're going, we can kind of get an idea of what this is supposed to look like, so we can make sure that the next bit looks right. And the better you get those reference points, the easier it'll be for you to do bits. So I'm going to just like sketch in some bits, kind of vaguely speaking, where the other parts of the hand are, and then we'll maybe actually continue rendering stuff. Because I'm getting a little bit lost up here, and rather than continuing to be lost and then screwing up all the things that I've got over there, I'm going to just draw a little bit and get back on track. So we got this right here. This would be where my pinky is. I'm going to draw like so in order to kind of know where the finger is. And it's like, it's a straight line up almost. Like the angle that I've got here is almost like a straight line there. So it's like so, and then it kind of from there levels off to be even with that right there. So then that means that we know where these fingers are in relationship to each other. So we can continue on. We've got that going on there. This actually touches, this finger is like almost touching that finger. These two fingers are way far apart because you got that hole there that you can see the paper that I put underneath, so you wouldn't have to look at the mat that I paint on. So that means that it's like so. Again, it's a lot about just trying to find yourself, or trying to find where you're at in your drawing based on the reference points that you've got. So that's really too low, because we know that this line is where it ends up, right? So we go like so. And if it looks a little sketchy, if it looks a little bit funky, then it's fine. We're only sketching right now. We can clean this up in a minute. Draw like so. Draw like so. Get a line like so. We got the finger. We know it's up in this corner here, right? In reference to everything else that we got. And there's like the slightly darker bit there. And it touches all the way up until just past this joint. So that actually looks pretty good. Like we're on the right track for that bit. This finger is a little bit messed up. We're going to clean it up a little bit in a minute. But I'm just trying to, again, find some bits and some references that I can use. It's not perfect, but we're kind of on the right track. And a lot of this sketch is going to look very wrong up until you get to the rendering parts where we're actually like cleaning up and making it look right. But is that right? No. See, look at how far this is to that. And now we know that that's wrong. So that means that I need to bring this in a bit more and do like so. And so anytime I'm doing a painting, you know, even though it's not a hand, I'm still going to be like, okay, where is this in relationship to that? Where is the windowsill in relationship to, you know, the bar stool or, you know, whatever, and kind of measuring things out in my head. I may not be, you know, explaining it every single time just because, you know, I don't need to. I'm talking to myself most of the time, but that gets us that, right? All right, so that's something along the lines of what I want. Can I clean up any of these lines to make it look a little bit better? Well, there's a little bit of a shadow here. A little bit of a sketchy line here for the shadow there. So it's really not difficult once you like break it down into parts. Rather than trying to draw it all at once, just try and figure out, okay, where is the pinky in relationship to this? Where is this in relationship to that? Where is that in relationship to that? And eventually, it all starts to come together. I hope this has been helpful. I hope this is useful information and not just me rambling, which is what it feels like I'm doing right now. But if you found this helpful, give it a sub. Or, you know, check out in the description, I've got a list of people who've supported me on Patreon. You can go and join them at the $5 or more tier. I'll actually say your name in the credits, like the following people, and I'm going to record this in post, so it's going to have a different sound in the mic. Thank you, Wafu. Thank you, Theodore Corbiere. Thank you, Spiral. Thank you, Spencer Kane. Thank you, Punkster. Thank you, Phoenixia Theoran. Thank you, Oboist Kirby. Thank you, Nicholas Perazine. Thank you, Micah. Thank you, Maliciousness. Thank you, Lost Nevada. Thank you, Kayla Hollinger. Thank you, Geizozan. Thank you, Duxu. Thank you, Kathy Rose. Thank you, Bubba Fair. Thank you, Pep. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Adam Kearney. And thank you, Ants! Anyway, thank you again to all the people who support me on Patreon. This is not the best hand that I've ever drawn, but it's sufficient, I feel like, for our purposes here in just kind of discovering what it looks like to draw a hand. You know what? No, we're not going to clean it up. We're just going to call it there. I think this is an okay looking hand. It's funky and a little bit like weird looking, but I mean, considering the model that we've got here, that's about right. I got a weird looking hand. And you'll find that you also have a weird looking hand once you actually start studying it, because hands are actually weird looking. Maybe lighten that bit up a little bit, but anyway, there's a hand for you. Hopefully this has been helpful. If this has been, let me know. If it hasn't been, let me know. Close enough. But that's where I'm going to call it for today. Hopefully this was helpful. And yeah, you can continue to just sort of clean this up, erase off all these lines like this and there, and maybe go back in with a pen and actually like get some of these lines. If you're on the computer, you can actually just lower the opacity of this and use maybe a different color for the sketch, like red or something, and then when you're actually coloring it in and stuff like that, use the actual colors. Whatever you need to do. But hopefully this was helpful. If it was, let me know. I'll see you around for the next one. Goodbye.